Going. All right. Next up, we have Avalon Paradea with their talk on Kuku, Kapa, and Pilina, Āina, Barkcloth-making and Relationships with Nature.
You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, awesome. I'll wait until the screen comes up. Okay. Aloha, everybody. My name is Avalon Paradea. My talk today is Kuku, Kapa, and Pilina, Āina, Barkcloth-making and Relationships with Nature. And I should also explain, I'm a second-year student in the TCBES master's program. Next slide, please. By show of hands, who here knows what Kapa is? Okay, all right, good. This is a lot more people than I'm used to, actually. So I do feel that it's really important to give a little background information, even if those of you who know what Kapa is might be, already known information. But Kapa is a Hawaiian word for barkcloth. It's often referred to as Kapa throughout the Pacific. The Kapa is specifically Hawaiian word for barkcloth. Kapa was traditionally used in Hawaii. It was the fabric of what used for everything you can imagine would have been fabric. So baby's first blanket, funeral shrouds, clothing, bedding, basically anything except for baha sails. A lot of people ask if Kapa was used for the sails of the canoe. It was not, that was not all, but Kapa was used for everything else fabric related. With the importation of European and American textiles and starting in the late 18th century, Kapa was rapidly replaced. And I think that this quote by the famous historian Samuel Hamakau is really telling. In his book, Napoge Kahiko, he explains, and this book was written in the late 18th century, so about 100 years after the arrival of European colonizers. He stated that all are dead who knew how to make coverings and adornments that made the wearers look proud and distinguished. Next slide, please. Kapa thankfully was resurrected during the 1960s and the 1970s by a number of pioneering Hawaiian women who put a lot of time and effort into relearning how to make Kapa. And in so doing this practice, they were often visiting museum collections, looking at historic Kapa, also going to outer islands outside of Hawaii and learning about Kapa production in other Pacific communities. Thankfully, in bringing this practice back, their legacy lives on. Although these early innovative women have passed, their own haumana, their students live today and are passing this knowledge on. I myself am a haumana of Kapa. I've been making Kapa since 2017 with my Kumura helpers, who I met at the Wili Wili Festival in 2017. So kind of bringing that back in, that idea of community and relationship building. I feel very fortunate to be part of this. Okay, so next slide. All right, so the process of making Kapa is very time and labor intense, and it's entirely reliant on the Āina natural materials. So Kapa is made primarily from the inner bast of the wauke tree, although it's referred to as barkcloth. This is a bit of a misnomer. We don't actually use the bark, we use the inner bark of the tree. And so these trees are usually 1 year to 2 years old. They're harvested by cutting at the base. The material is stripped off. The outer ely, the bark is scraped off. And that inner bast is breaded or fermented for several days in salt water and fresh water. And then it's beaten out on a pohaku and then later on a kua, which is a wooden mango. And once you have several layers of bast are laid on top of each other in order to make Kapa. So these basts are felted together using wood beaters, hohoa first, and then make Kuku after. Once you have a finished piece of Kapa, they are generally decorated using plant dyes or earth pigments or other natural materials. And again, traditionally would have been used as clothing and bedding and such. Nowadays, a lot of Kapa practitioners mostly make their pieces as visual art, but there are people who also make Kapa for wearable purposes as well. Next slide. So my purpose today, and a big project that I've been working on for the past several months, is an oral history project interviewing kupuna or older Kapa practitioners to explore their Pilina with this practice and the natural materials that they use. Some of the questions that I'm exploring are where participants source their wauke, whether they grow plants for dye or whether they obtain them elsewhere, either through trade or perhaps through purchase or foraging, what woods their implements are made from, and what changes they have observed in the environments they source the materials over time, if any. So what is oral history? The Oral History Association defines oral history as a method of gathering, preserving, and interpreting the voices and memories of people, communities, and participants in past events. This work involves an interviewer, so in this case myself, and narrators, or my participants. Generally, interviews are conducted with specific questions in mind, but they can also be very open-ended. Interviews are recorded and transcribed, with transcripts being returned to the narrators for final review. Both recordings and transcripts are often archived for posterity and for public access as well. It should be noted that the definition provided here is stemming from a Western academic perspective. Oral history has in cases been used as an othering tool. And a lot of the time, personal accounts can be seen as subjective and therefore less reliable than Western scientific approaches. Indigenous scholars have explained that oral history transcends the mere recording and analysis of a person's stories as their lived experiences, which contain invaluable truths, identities, and observations. As a primary source of information, oral history is found to be a powerful tool that allows for the cultivation and dissemination of local and indigenous knowledge in the first-person voices of the narrators. Next slide, please. Oral history is an excellent method with which to explore environmental observations made throughout the lives of those interviewed. Kapa practitioners are closely connected with the Āina as the materials that they rely on must be grown, foraged, or traded with others. The practice of Kilo Āina, making observations of the landscape, is integral to this work. Kapa makers attune with the natural world puts them in a unique position as caretakers and informants pertaining to the well-being of our local landscapes. And here I will just, if you want to go back real quick. So we've been moving through it. I haven't been explaining some of these pictures, but this is the image of some of the dye materials that we use in Kapa. One of my friends, Lisa Schattenberg-Raymond, and I were set up doing a demo last month. And so she had a bunch of plant materials and alaya soils. So I wanted to just showcase some of these materials that we use. Okay. All right. So my methodology in this project, I have been relying on suggestions provided by my team to find my narrators. So several of these individuals are people that I do know personally. Others I have a virtual relationship with. We're very connected on social media, which has been a really beautiful use of Instagram in my experience. I know a lot of Kapa makers all throughout the world, but I have not met a lot of them personally. Others I did not know at all until Rowan mentioned them, and I was able to reach out to them for help. Several of these folks made it very clear to me that they were only interested in talking to me because of my connection with Rowan, which is a really important thing for me to keep in mind. In my interview process, I'm using a talk story approach. So although I do have some questions that I'm asking, I'm allowing most of those questions to be answered through the natural course of our conversations. Often, and I'm using an Olympus recorder and transcribing interviews using Otter AI. So a key document that I was provided with in January, and thankfully just took a training as well this past weekend in, that has been helping guide my methodology, is the Kulana Noki. This set of guiding principles was developed by folks affiliated with the University of Hawaii Sea Grant College program and associated partners. Aspects that I have embodied in my work include respect for the individuals that I'm speaking with, reciprocity, giving back to them in whatever ways feels most appropriate to them. Self-awareness. I am a holiday person who was raised here in Hawaii and am fortunate to be Hanai or adopted into this practice. I do not have a genealogical tie to Kapa. Clear and ongoing communication with those that I'm interviewing, and community engagement by sharing whatever I'm given permission to share with our greater. As mentioned, recorded and transcribed interviews are themselves a key outcome of this project. These documents will be archived by the Center for Oral History of UH NOAA, where they can be accessed by students, researchers, and the public in future. A second outcome of my work is the creation of a story map. Who here knows what a story map is? Okay, again, I figured most of you guys know what story maps are. So this is something that I didn't know what the story map was until a couple semesters ago. And I find them to be incredible tools for disseminating knowledge. I find them very accessible as well. And that's key because a lot of the people I'm speaking with, they're older, they don't use technology quite the same way that a lot of us do. So what we're going to be doing is taking quotes and statements by my narrators and translating those to a Lalahava'i. So my story map is going to be bilingual, allowing for greater access and also to decolonize the language used to explain Kapa. We're going to be focusing on some of the places highlighted in our conversation. So actually bringing maps in, showing where they've obtained their materials, where our interviews are taking place, where these folks are from, as well as photos and images of the work that they've created. And final thoughts, throughout this work, I've come to value our community more deeply than I already did, which is really saying something because this community means a great deal to me. The Kupuna that I've interviewed are just the most creative, generous people that I've ever had the honor of meeting in my entire life. The fact that Kapa did lie dormant for so many decades is something that should not be forgotten. It's taken a lot of tenacity and dedication to bring this practice back and keep it going as well. So I'm really excited to share this information with folks and hopefully bring other future Kapa makers into the field as well. Mahalo.
Anyone have questions for
Yes. Could you explain the purpose of the tools that are depicted on your shirt? Yes. Yeah. So actually, I wish that I had a clearer photo of these, but in this background image too, you can see a bunch of the Kuku and Hohoa. So the Hohoa are these rounded wood beaters that are used for the initial beating of the bass once it has spread to the desired degree. When you're actually layering bass on top of each other on your kuku, you're using an Kuku, which is depicted on my shirt. So these tools are four-sided wood beaters as opposed to being rounded. And there's watermarks or grooves that are carved into them. Those watermarks are not only decorative, but they also serve a functional purpose in allowing the bass to felt together. So as you're beating them together, you're not just beating them out, you're beating them into each other. So it's a felting practice, essentially. Any other questions? Yes. Yes, yeah, all throughout the Pacific. So Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Rapanui, Aotearoa as well, although in Aotearoa, flax was primarily what was worn by people. It's a little too cold to grow wauke the way that we do in warmer climates. It is generally a warmer climate, but wauke itself is a canoe plant, as people refer to it, or Polynesian introduced plant. So it shows a lot of love that this plant was carried all throughout the Pacific. From origins in China and Taiwan. Barkcloth is also made in other places as well, such as Africa, although their traditions are going to be a little different than what we see there. Yeah. So I'll just the same techniques. There's been a lot of local adaptation and evolution in barkcloth making throughout the Pacific. So going back to Hannah's question about the on my shirt, the watermarks that we see in Hawaii, these are unique to Hawaii. There are traditions where you do see some watermarks in places, but it's not quite the same as Hawaii. The degree to which the designs carved, the intricacy of those designs are very unique to Hawaii. Even things like the fermentation process and the plants used as well. Although wauke, the hooper mulberry tree, is the primary used in Hawaii. In other parts of the Pacific, there were other species that were more commonly used, such as certain types of banyan or cactus tree. So I just was to the ones that are native. Sorry, one more time.
Do one very big, I wasn't need to big. I'll see what you are.
We're trying very hard to be able to make things as beautifully as they were made historically. Let me know if I'm going over time. Yeah. So, one of the beautiful outcomes of this project has been getting to see. A couple of weeks ago, I went with my crew and a few friends to see museum collections of Issue Museum for my first time and several of their first times as well. These historic Kapa are very, very thin. They're very, very fine. The decorations used on them are incredible and very precise a lot of the time. There have been times where with my friends, we've looked at some historic pieces and I actually, with the help of community members, I did a GoFundMe a few years ago and we were able to purchase a historic collection of Kapa that now resides here at the Milwaukee Library. So anybody who's interested in seeing that, you just have to go into the Hawaiian Studies Center and ask them for specimens of Hawaiian Kapa. It's really amazing. Wear gloves when you are looking at specimens, but the first time I looked through this book with a friend, we were like, what are we doing wrong? Because our Kapa is so thick and so rough compared to these beautiful, fine, lacy Kapa made in the past. So we're trying very hard to bring that back. But it's taking a lot of time. Any other questions? Yes.
It's like, to have a different idea for something, where do you source the, you guys know it, or is this often?
Right. So that's been part of my project is asking Kapa practitioners where they're obtaining their wellcare from. And I'm very fortunate that my kumu Rowan owns a farm in Waiman. So she grows her wellcare. We have two specific varieties that we're using on her farm. So one of them is called Manamana Lima, which is considered to be more of like a Taiwanese variety, from what I understand, Southeast Asian variety. But another one that we use is Koa'aha, which is a Hawaiian variety that is very adapted to our climate here. And we do see differences between these varieties as well. It also depends on the growing season and the rainfall. There's been, in the 6 years that I've been part of this practice, there have been some hard years and it's been very, very dry, unfortunately. But recently we've been harvesting and that was amazing. So that's been really good. Did you have a question?
Yeah. So did you have to go to Oahu for the Kuku training, or did they have options for that?
We were very fortunate. Just this past weekend, they came out and did a training here on Hawaii Island. So I would definitely encourage you to maybe reach out to those folks and see if they do trainings at other times. But I'm not sure exactly how often they offer those. It was really exceptional.
Yeah. Just thinking it would be great to see that expanded or UHELO's version, something like that.
Yes. Totally.
That guide is also public access.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. So I've been really grateful to be able to use it. Going to the training just like cemented it further and like great.